one thing that is inevitable when building a website is errors. So in today, tomorrow, you are going to encounter errors when building your website. So that's where error handling comes in handy. So it's something that a lot of developers usually move away from when building websites. And a lot of developers also shy away from that topic when they are learning programming languages. So it's very important. So one of the reasons why error handling is important is because it stops breaks in website. So you might be scrolling through a website and you see that website just breaks out of the blue and everything just stops. So maybe you see a blank screen or you see some cryptic messages on the website and just funny things I don't understand. So that's because the error was not handled properly. So it's something that's very, very important. Another reason why error handling is important is because of user experience. So in order to enhance your user experience, you need to handle your errors properly. So in things like showing the user why a certain error occurred. So your user is filling a form, and after submitting the form, an error happens. Let's say, for example, the documents, for example, that I submitted is supposed to be a docx file instead of a PDF file. Why the user submits that, an error show an error message should pop up to tell the user that it's a docx file that is required, not a PDF file. But on the flip side, that should be handled before submitting. So that's one aspect of error handling. So error handling comes in from the back end side and also comes in from the front end side. So before I go into reasons why you need to handle it from the front end side before going to the back end side, I would also want to talk about the reasons. So let me continue with the reasons why it's important. So another reason why error handling is important is because it increases trust in your application. So the less errors are encountered by the user, the more the trust will be built on your application. And it actually pisses off users when you encounter endless errors on applications and the bounce rate is going to increase. Yeah. Another reason why error handling is important is because it saves us on unnecessary API calls. This happens especially during form fillings. Yes, so when the user, for example, wants to set or fill his personal information, we have things like date of birth. Date of birth is usually required. So the front-end developer can just put the validation before it gets to the back end, which might also trigger or will definitely trigger an error for filling date of birth. So the user can add the front end developer rather can add a validation on the front end that date of birth is a required field. So for example, when you are filling a form and you've not filled the date of birth, you won't be able to click the submit button. You might have come across that in one way or the other when you are filling maybe your university form, your anything, registering for Facebook or something like that. So that's one area where error handling also helps. So it saves us cost. Yeah. So let's talk about some types of error that we might encounter. So one category is the network errors. For example, 404, 500 internal server errors. I think we also have bad gateway, 502 errors. Yeah, so those are network errors. We also have user input errors, something like the form is not valid or maybe the password strength is weak. So those are type of errors that we might encounter on inputs. Another type of error that we have is runtime errors. These errors happens in the code level. So the developers are the one that usually sees type of error. Something like user is not defined. This breaks the code. We also have something like reference errors. Yeah, we have type errors. So these are developer centric errors. Also, we can have third-party errors. So, for example, the third-party packages that you install on your application or your code base, something like, for example, Stripe API keys or your Google API keys. We are having errors from the Google, so or Google Map or Google Console or anything, and they have an error on their own part. It's going to trickle down to your own application. Yeah, so that's an example of a third party error. So we have best practices for handling errors. And yeah, so one of the best practices is showing proper error messages. You need to sanitize the message, especially when it's coming from the back end. Show it properly, show the right thing, and use proper components or proper UIs to show it. For example, I think toast are one of the best ways to show errors now, or success messages also. So, but in terms of error handling, showing proper error messages, toasts are okay. You can use modal. I think modal is kind of outdated, but toasts are they are what is in vogue now. Yeah. So you can use the tools to show the right messages. So you can show messages like invalid email formats, invalid form field imputed, or things like that. So just have to show the right message. So also from the developer standpoint, you need to use codes that properly handle messages, especially when you're using when you're working on JavaScript. Use promises, use try catch. So you try and you catch. So the catch is for the error. The try to properly run the function that actually runs the code, but the catch is what handles those errors, so your application will know it's not going to break. Yeah, so it's that catch block that you actually handle the errors. So that's one way for developers to handle errors on their own part, the developer standpoint, so you not start seeing breakage, or break-ins. Yeah, another best practice is to handle validations early, quite early. So things like emails, your password, you need to tell the users that, for example, the password needs to have a capital letter, needs to have numbers, needs to have special characters. If that's required from the back end, you also need to tell the users from the front end. So like we said in the previous section, that this saves us costs. Yeah, so we need to handle our forms, validate our forms early, to let the users know that this is what we want, and also saves us time. Yeah. Another best practice is to implement fallback UIs. For example, an error occurs, a fallback UI will just show you a page. Instead of the page going blank, it's going to show you a page that you have set to, like, is this falls in error banding in React. So it just helps you to keep your page in check, to hold everything strong, instead of just showing like a breakage, a breaking in the application. This will just show the user a certain form of UI. Yeah, so that's it. And another best practice for error handling is logging errors for debugging. Yeah, so we have to log our errors. We have things like console.error, we have console.log. Although don't we shouldn't push console.logs to production. Yeah, but instead of using console.log, we have applications like Sentry or Log Rockets, where we can now log our errors, so that we are going to see those things happen before the user start complaining. For example, anything happens in your application, the application is breaking, you are going to get the notification in real time before the user sends you a message and make you feel like a fool. So when you get that notification, you as a developer or the product team just go back and start working on that error to fix it. Yeah, so that's one of our best practices when handling errors. Yeah, so that's that about error handlings, and I hope you've learned a thing or two. Even if you are not a developer, you can still get one or two things. You can now understand why you are receiving, you are seeing errors, and you can now appreciate the developer that are developing your website or the website that you use, and know that these guys are doing a very great deal. So when you see an error message, just show a sign of appreciation, to a developer. Thank you. Peace out.